All right, there we go. Man, people may know I've been doing a flight simulator game, and doing these streams is very similar. You got all these different moving parts. You got, okay, watching the time down here, and watching the audio over here, and watching this go over here, and that's very similar, actually, but anyways, a couple things. One, yeah, if you, I just posted this on Twitter. If you guys can help me out, my flight sim game on my Flight Simulator 2020.3.8, I can't figure out the takeoffs. I've done Microsoft Flight Simulator, not the 2020, but the older version. So I understand the concepts, but for some reason, you go down center line, you full throttle, you got 10.
Good to meet you.
Likewise, man. You and I have been communicating for quite some time, actually. I mean, but you claim that you can actually show my WASP argument to be incorrect, or at least you think.
Yeah, so I thought that picture was hilarious. I don't think I ever said I'd destroy it, but you got to sell newspapers.
We're allowed to be a little hyperbolic, you know.
Yeah, it's the internet. But yeah, I got a lot of questions. I figured it'd just be easier to talk and see what you say about. Some of them just don't seem right to me. So.
All right. Well, let's start from the beginning first. All right. So you want to do the WASP argument, okay? And let's go from the very beginning. What is the WASP argument? And then we can kind of go from there. What you find to be incorrect with it? I think it's fair.
Oh, yeah. I kind of wanted to maybe hit a few if we're on the same. Get on the same page terminology-wise first. Let me bring up your WASP argument.
Now, you did say you spent an inordinate amount of hours on this particular.
Oh, yeah. I've been going through this line by line by line and going back and forth between the diagram and everything.
You're going to hate my atheist semantic collapse argument because it's much more formalized than my WASP.
Yeah, exactly. This is sort of informal, and that may be part of the confusion. But yeah, essentially you're saying you can jump, if you want to know about WASP, you can really just jump to the conclusion, right?
Yeah, no, and I'm fine with that. I'm glad you noticed that. The summary of the conclusion, that's the argument. What I show to get there is kind of irrelevant, but it's just for somebody who says, hey, look, can you give me more detail? It's there if they want it. But I agree with you. The argument itself is encapsulated in this summation.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yes, I would. Yeah, right. It says, reading it here, it says, if one asserts weak atheism, not belief in God, is to be held as atheism, then someone else can assert that weak theism can be held as theism.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
That's it in a nutshell. Right.
We're on the same page. It's there if they want it.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I don't know about how this isn't a proof. You called it an argument, right? So. Yeah,
I mean, because there's really no direct logical rules of inferences in it, right? I mean, it follows, it flows, it's consistent. It's more of an argument that if you allow, it's an informal thing where if you allow this and you don't allow this, that would invoke special pleading.
Right. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're on the same page. It's there if they want it.
Okay. All right. So I'm on the wrong.
That's on your end.
This isn't a proof. You called it an argument. What's happening here?
Is it on your end or my end?
I think that's my end. There was another window that suddenly woke up and started talking.
Yeah.
So can you bring up that little Venn diagram that you used when you were talking to Landon? Did you invent that?
I did, but Landon helped me kind of summarize the legend. I did the top part. He helped me with the bottom. That makes sense. All right. So I do have the Venn diagram for the outside. They can see it right now.
Okay.
And by the way, I kept just so people know, I kept the God exists is a third person plural. I kept it the same because I didn't want anybody to think that if you have a proposition, the negation is anything more than just it is not the case that God exists or God does not exist. So God exists or God does not exist is actually grammatically correct in the third person. You can go read that, but that's the only thing people are very pinged on this thing about. Oh, that should be exist. Well, not necessarily. But that's a minor point. That's a quibble. But I did it on purpose.
Okay. Yeah, because this thing is great. It really lays out the logic well. And no matter what terminology you use, you're still beholden to the logic in this diagram, right?
I think so, yeah. Now, again, I don't accept the schema personally, obviously, right? I think the schema is kind of flawed. That's why I don't use it. But this was to show, if you do accept this type of schema, these are the logical implications of it. Because I think the logic is, before you dismantle the WASP argument, do you accept that the Venn diagram, logically speaking, is fine? I mean, it's unassailed. I mean, is there anything logically incorrect with that?
No, I think logic. In fact, moreover, I think this logic must apply to. I sort of call them the philosophical framework versus the lack theist framework. Mm-hmm. Which really is just the terminology, what words you ascribe to various sets in this picture, right?
Okay, fair enough.
That's sort of how I look at it. Mm-hmm. So I just had actually two things I wanted to ask about this. So one, I was noticing I was having a hard time getting my head around whether let's just use the left-hand side one where atheist is green.
Yep.
I was trying to figure out if when you say weak atheist or not BP, that refers to just the green part or if it also includes the yellow part.
It includes it includes the entire circle. Everything that's in that 360 degrees is a weak atheist as far as logically speaking, not necessarily by label or by position. And what I mean by that is that strong would have to be a subset of weak in this. Obviously, you have to be, in order to be a strong atheist, and again, we're talking about this diagram here.
Correct.
If you believe the proposition's false, that would entail that you don't believe it's true, right? There's an epistemic entailment there, correct?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So strong is a subset of weak. That's how you read the Venn diagram. So everything in that circular area, not just the green, but the yellow over here and the darker pink in the middle, that all does not believe God exists. It all is not BP. So so everything in that they say, well, weak atheist is somebody who does not believe, would include all three of those, right? The middle, the green part, the darker middle, which is like a dark pink, I guess, and then the yellow. All three of those do not believe God exists. Correct?
Correct. Yes.
Now, I didn't put I didn't put it in the strong. I could have put B. Not P implies, not BP, but I didn't because it's a Venn and it's too small. I didn't want to. There's no need to.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because from looking at this, so I understand that, believe not P is a subset of not believe P, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Because I can't say it's false and then say, well, I don't believe it. That would make no sense. If you believe that it's false, you don't believe the proposition is true, clearly.
Right. Yeah. But when you were talking to Landon and in WASP itself, it makes the point that strong basically refers to belief and the weak position refers to not belief, right?
Yeah, more importantly, the not BP is more of a psychological position. It no longer is propositional on the proposition of God existing. When you say believe not P, that means you believe the proposition God does not exist. It's a propositional belief. But not BP is no longer a propositional belief. It is a psychological belief of unbelief. It's a second order belief is what it is. But it's a psychological state. It's your mind, it's depending upon the state of consciousness rather than the state of God existing or not, which is odd, but that's how it works, and it's no big deal. But yeah, I mean, if you believe the proposition is false, then yes, obviously you have the psychological state that you don't believe that God exists. Sure.
Okay. Wouldn't it be more accurate, though, to say that the weak atheist position is not BP intersected with the complement of B not P?
Well, but that's where the agnostic area lies, right? The agnostic area is the position where you have no position either way, right? You don't believe it's true and you don't believe it's false, which is the conjunction of not BP and not B, not B. That's the conjunction right there. That's why it's the intersection. It's actually the union of the two groups on the Venn diagram, but that's how it would be in set theory. But it's the conjunction, right? So the agnostic has all the people that do not believe God exists conjoined, and is a conjunction with all the people that don't believe that God does exist. So if you have no position either way, that's the agnostic position here, which is this is standard.
It took me a while to figure out. There's sort of four. As an individual, you can't really be in just the green spot, right?
Right, and a lot of people don't pick that up. Yeah, the reason why it's really difficult to try to argue that they're just, and this is what when they say I'm just a weak atheist. think about this. You're right. You cannot really land in that position because not BP either is one of two cases. You're not BP either because you have no position either way, which lands you in the middle, or you're strong, in which case you would be in the yellow. So you can't really be in that green area. It's not a position where you can rest upon. That's how I put it.
Yeah. It's almost like it resolves. You have to take, in the end, you have to take the position on not P, and that'll push you into one of the boxes.
Correct. And I even showed that people to logic, and I'm glad you caught that. You've actually done some really, you've looked at this, and I don't question it at all. I know you have. Because, because I've explained that very thing to people. I'm like, look, if you're not BP and don't hold a B not P, the only other option is the middle. There is no other option, because if you think about this, the strong B not P, if you don't, you're not B not P, which means you're in the middle, not BP and not B not P. Now, again, it sounds kind of odd, but people, if they work through this and listen to the video, they'll get what we're saying is that if you don't have a strong position, when I say you don't have a strong epistemic position, you land in the middle. There's no other recourse, logically speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, you're on the same page.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the only one thing I'm still stuck on is it still seems to me that the B not P is a subset of not BP, but that's not true for the weak atheist. Why? Right? Because
What do you mean?
weak does not apply to a strong belief. So
Well, okay, I got you.
weak atheists are a little different.
I got you. Okay. All right. So, and by the way, Chris, it's a union. Unions are conjunctions. So it's a conjunction. So it has to be a union, not an intersection. All right. So what you're saying is this. The weak atheist, there's the logical condition for the weak atheist, which means not BP, right? There's also the epistemic position of somebody who says, look, I am merely saying that I don't accept the position God exists. I'm not making any other statement other than that. Okay, now what happens is when they do that, they are technically in that not BP area, but it's underdetermined. And what I mean by that, you don't know which ones they are. When you just say, look, I lack to believe God exists, that doesn't tell me where you are in the Venn diagram other than you have to be in that circle to the left. But either you have to either go, okay, I do not believe God exists because I believe God doesn't, or I don't have a position either way. You have to go one way or the other. So when somebody just says, I'm a weak atheist and I just do not believe God exists, it's underdetermined. And in that case, they are in that green area, but you can't rest there because it's indeterminate or underdetermined of where they're going to go. And so it doesn't tell me where they actually are in that diagram, rationally speaking, because they have to end up either strong or agnostic. There's no other things they can have, period. The logic works out that way. I mean, I've shown that in other things I've written as well. You have to be one of those positions.
Yes, I concur.
Yeah. So epistemically speaking, when somebody says, why does lack of belief God exist? Yeah, they're epistemically in the green area, but I don't know what position they have. They're either going to don't have a position either way, or they're going to hold position God does not exist. It's very vague, correct?
Okay. Yeah, well, and the reason I brought it up is I've been trying to wrap my head around this piece because in WASP you say weak atheist equals not BP, right? And to me, it's like they seem like they're a little different. So what are you actually meaning?
I do that for a reason because that's what the New Atheist TM put out, right? I'm using their vernacular. I'm using their definitions, right? Because they keep on saying atheism is merely a lack of belief God exists. Okay, if atheism is merely a lack of belief God exists, then it would be equivalent to weak atheism, right? Because weak atheist is saying, I don't have a belief God exists. It's indistinguishable.
Yeah, I'm not sure I concur there either, but it may be because of a similar issue.
Well, if I say I don't believe God exists, right, which is the green area, right? I don't believe God exists. That's what a weak atheist would say that clearly. I don't believe God exists. Now, the weak atheist is not saying anything more than that. But all strong atheists have to be weak atheists. But
why doesn't the not believe and not P also that should also fall under the lack of belief?
No, agnostic would be under weak atheism as well.
No, the weak theist Why isn't weak theist part of lack of belief?
Oh, because they lack a belief in the negation, not of the positive, right? They don't. It's not that they lack a belief in P. They actually believe P. So they're not going to fall on the left-hand side. They believe P is true. But they also believe they lack a belief that God does not exist, right? So they're saying look at the strong position for the theist, right? Strong BP. That person saying I believe God exists, right? Which by as a subalternation, they're saying God. I don't believe God does not exist. They're not accepting the negation of the proposition because they accept the proposition.
Okay.
So if they're saying I accept P, I accept God to be the case, they're not accepting the negation of the proposition, which would be God does not exist. They don't accept that. Clearly, a theist would say, I don't accept the proposition God does not exist. Right?
No, I'm talking about an atheist.
Right, but you moved it over to the right-hand side for a second.
Well, because of the way that they phrase lack of belief. Let's try this for a second,
Sure.
Right? So if we wipe out all of the English words on this, in this diagram and just keep the logical parts, right? To me, it seems like what the lack theist is saying is in that box where it says strong BP, that's where a lack theist would put theist. And then atheist is absolutely everything on the outside of that. It's the complement of BP. Right? That's sort of what I see they're saying, because if you lack belief that a God exists, that's everything outside of the BP circle.
Yeah, if they don't believe God exists, then okay. So, well, no, wait. If they believe God exists, they don't. The weak theist. Okay, I see what you're saying, but the problem is that it's outside that circle, because the weak theist is saying, hey, look, I'm not saying God exists. I lack the position God exists, but I also lack the position God does not exist, which moves over to the left, to the agnostic. It's the same thing. So the weak theist is not making the assertion God exists, clearly. So it's not going to be part of that strong BP. Again, this is their usages, right?
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at, is like you're sort of applying philosophical concepts to something that they're not sophisticated enough to actually have.
Well, clearly.
So, I mean, it seems to me, in fact, the way that it's phrased, right, it's disbelieve in gods, which is the normal philosophical atheist,
yeah,
or it's lack of belief in gods. And lack of belief in gods, to me, means, the BP complement set.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. If I wanted to simplify it and just make it people that believe in everybody else. But then,
I mean, I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah, right. And I've seen that Venn diagram too, and I know exactly what you're trying to say on that. That Venn diagram would work for that dichotomy that they falsely make. However, the problem with that is it doesn't incorporate the negation of the proposition, right? They're just saying anybody who's this isn't this. They're making a false dichotomy that way. But they also break it down to say, look, I'm not making any assertion either way, right?
They're not claiming to have a dichotomy. They're basically they're taking an A and not A approach.
They're making dichotomous. They're saying either you're a theist or an atheist, period. There are no other positions, which we all know is wrong. We've already established that. But they're making it dichotomous, right? Theists and non-theists are a dichotomy, right? That's a simple dichotomy, theist or not theist, right? I mean, clearly, it's either the case you're a theist or you're not the case as a theist. But what they're trying to do is they semantically change not theist to the word atheist, which is I call it semantic substitution. You can't get that from first principles of logic. You can't derive that. That has to be something that you just do as a premise by fiat, by assumption. And then they make that normative and say, look, it has to be this way logically. No, I can say theist, not theist equals cat. Therefore, you have theist or cat. It's the same thing that they're doing.
Yeah, but it's just a label, right?
Sure.
So I don't see why. I don't quite see how you can have that objection without you yourself doing special pleading, right? For instance, let's say that they kept theist, right? Like if you were listening to the Atheist Experience, and they used the word theist, they said and did everything that they have done in the past, but instead of the word atheist, they used purplist or something, right?
Yeah.
A whole different word. Would you still have the same objections? Like, would WASP still apply in your mind?
To some degree, because look, that is again is a semantic substitution. If you start with first principles, you have A or not A is going to be triple bar T, which means A or not A is always true, right? That's a tautology. A or not A, right? It's always a true. It means you're always going to have true in the last column. It's a tautology. So it has to be the case that A or not A. Now, if I instantiate A, I get theist or not theist. That always holds true. First principles. But I can say that disjunction to be anything I want. I can say, you know what? Not theist means catist if I want. So you're either a theist or you're a catist, because anybody who is not a theist is called a catist. It's a label. It doesn't necessarily mean they believe in cats. It's just a label. It's a term. Right. It's a semantic word.
Correct.
And so then they're saying, look, if you're not a theist, you must be an atheist, and there's no other thing since it's dichotomous. But it's like, wait a minute here. All they did was they took not theist and they changed it to a different word, saying those words are synonymous. They're not. They're called synonyms, but that doesn't mean equality. People think for some reason synonyms are exactly alike. They're not. Synonyms means they're similar. Right? A synonym is a word that is similar to something else, but not exactly the same. And so all atheists happen to be non-theists, but not all theists are atheists. There's a difference there. The converse doesn't hold. So they can't be the same.
Okay.
Because
a lack theist, they're really thinking of atheism as the non-theist position.
Yeah. There's changing the word non-theist to atheist and saying that's normative and that's how it is, and that's a dichotomy. And it is a dichotomy using their schema, right? That is true. Logically, they make it a dichotomy. But I can do the same thing by saying theist or cat. If you're not a theist, you're a cat. It's the same exact thing. They're making a false disjunction, or basically it's a false dichotomy, right? Because obviously you don't have to include one of those.
Yeah, I totally don't get that part. I mean, you're free to label whatever groups of these positions with whatever labels you want, or not even a label. Like, they don't really even have a label for B not P, right?
It's an artificial. Okay, I'll be charitable. I'll call it an artificial dichotomy rather than a false dichotomy, because it's artificial, but it is dichotomous, right? Theist and atheist is dichotomous the way they make it, because they just change not theist to make it some other word, right? Like what's the word for non-theist in some other language? Let's say it's nini. We call it nini. So in Chinese, nini means not theist. Same exact thing. So I say theist or nini. Okay, I'm not changing anything. That's still dichotomy. You're a theist or you're nini. Right? So it's just a semantic word that we're substituting for what non-theist represents. And they're saying atheist represents non-theist, which is, by the way, incredibly dishonest. Because, again, non-theism is an umbrella term that includes atheist and agnostics and ichtheist and skepticism and theological cognitivist and a whole bunch of other things. So for them to assume all these different other things by claiming, I'm just going to call non-theist atheist, is very intellectually dishonest. But that's what they try to do. But it makes it an artificial dichotomy, because the actual dichotomy is theist or not theist. They're just substituting that word non-theist for something that it normally isn't used that way. Atheist does not mean non-theist. That's not the same thing. They're a type of non-theist.
It can mean like if cat is non-theist, then atheist can.
But that's a semantic argument, right? Then the theist can say, well, anybody who's not an atheist is a catist as well, or something. Or they could say, non-atheist, atheist or non-atheist. If you're not somebody who believes in God, I'm going to call non-atheism theism. So if you don't believe God doesn't exist, you're a theist. That's part of the WASP argument. I mean, this is exactly what this is showing you. That's what they do, right? If an atheist, think about this carefully. If an atheist says, "I'm changing the word non-theist to make it be that anybody who does not believe God exists is an atheist," the theist can change non-atheist to mean anybody who's a theist, right? And so, if you do not,
everything you just said was from the terminology and context of the philosophical framework.
Yes, that's
right.
True. Yeah.
And what you just said is actually gobbledygook in their language.
Well, because they don't bother understanding of this. Sure, I absolutely get that.
I don't see why they have to be beholden. Why, if anyone invents another framework and uses different words, why must it be beholden to things that are true within the philosophical framework.
Well, it doesn't, but there's a
logic, but not why the words.
Yeah, there's just a consistency there. Again, if the atheist says, if you don't hold this proposition true, you're this. That's what they're doing, right? If you don't hold the proposition true, you're labeled this, correct? Forget the details. That's what they're doing. Don't believe the proposition, you're this. WASP shows a theist can say, you don't believe the proposition, you're this. But the proposition happens to be the negation. They're doing the exact same thing. If you don't believe, and proposition, a negation of proposition is still true in some sense, right? It's the negation is considered to be called true. So if you can say God exists or God does not exist, and if God does not exist, then it's true that God does not exist, which makes negation true in this case, right? Does it make sense? I mean, it's kind of hard to really point this out without actually like writing it out. But the negation can be true, right? If God does not exist, and the proposition God does not exist is true.
Okay.
So we say that the negation is true.
Okay.
So negation doesn't necessarily have to be false. It's just the opposite of the proposition. God exists or God does not exist. One of them has to be true. There's no other options, right? God exists or God does not exist. So if God exists, that's true. If God does not exist, that's true. But we relate it as propositional and then the negation of the proposition. So the negation can be true.
It's the wording of the argument that I have in a variety of places. Like here's another. I got another couple things. Maybe you can clear up. Or,
but you do get the theist could say, look, if you don't hold the belief there are no gods, you're a theist. So agnostic is a theist, you know.
Well, that's another funny part about your conclusion. Theists can do whatever the heck they want.
But an atheist is doing the exact same thing.
Ironically, I think if you gave them the choice of your conclusion, right? What was your conclusion again? I got to bring it up.
If you don't allow theists to hold weak theism as theism, then you're committing special pleading.
Right. So if given the choice, if a theist had a choice where they could either say weak theism is theism versus weak atheism is atheism, I bet they would actually go with the weak atheist one. So the funny thing about your argument to me, the irony is, you know, particularly with Christians and they want to know that you're in that BP circle. They don't care about the non-B.
Right, I agree with you. No, 1,000%. But that's because I think, and I hate to say it, theists are a little more honest in that regard. And I'm not trying to promote theism, but see, theists have they have kind of an ontological commitment if you think about it, right? Because if what they're saying is true, and God exists, to them it's a positive belief, right? They hold theism as a positive belief. They don't go around saying, look, theism is merely the lack of belief that God does not exist. They don't do this.
Yeah, that won't get you into heaven.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Now you see the problem. Theists are kind of have an ontological commitment that if God exists, they can't just go, hey, look, if you don't believe God exists, you're still a theist, because that screws the whole thing with, hey, look, you have to believe to be saved and Jesus and the whole 9 yards. It just messes all that up, at least for certain sects. Of religion, right? It may not apply to all of them, but we're going to be talking about that.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Because of arguendo. So they're not going around saying that, but WASP shows that they could be justified to do so.
They could.
Yeah.
But ironically, I think they'd go the other way.
Well,
that's
you might be right on that. I mean, sure, but I mean, I don't understand. I've never understood why atheists are so against this. They should do the exact same thing theists go and say, yeah, atheism is a belief God does not exist. Let me tell you why. It wasn't until Anthony Flew in 1972 when he wrote The Presumption of Atheism, this was even brought up, really. Atheists didn't go around saying, I just merely lack a belief. This was something that was brought up. He even said this is against the standard usage. He called it a Humpty Dumptism. He understood that, but his argument was crap. But modern atheists have taken that argument and they've ran with it for demographics and political reasons. And it's dishonest.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's political. I've got sort of a different take on that.
Oh, they've said political. I know it's political. Pam Whistler from American Atheist is their editor. She says political. David Silverman, who wrote Finding God, says political. In Atheism, A Case Against God by George Smith, it's for demographics. None of them, if you talk to them, will tell you it's for anything but demographics. Genetically Modified Skeptic says it's for demographics. I mean, it is clearly for political power.
Okay, I guess if you want to look through a political prism, it doesn't mean everyone looks at it that way.
No, but you're right. You're right. I'm talking about the higher. I'm talking about the the atheists in charge going, this is what we're going to tell people atheism is.
Yeah, well, of course they're political. They're at the top of the heap. That's their thing, right?
Right. The lower echelon people, no, not so much. Right.
But for me, and I'm curious if you agree with this too. If the thing about this whole, I think that sometimes you and Landon were talking about how the lack theism approach is also less useful, right? That there's a lot more. There's symmetry and richness in sort of the philosophical way of looking at all this, right?
Yeah, there's an ist that relates to an ism. An atheist is somebody who believes in atheism. That is kind of broken, the way the lay atheists do it, the atheist community of Austin. But in philosophical atheism, it's not. There's a nice symmetry there. By the way, Kawasa, 10,001. Thank you for a super chat, Kawasa. If anybody else likes a super chat, by all means, I appreciate it. I haven't been very active as far as streaming for any kind of large things. I know that the drama kind of sells, and I kind of have been avoiding it. But I eventually will be talking about non sequitur and some other stuff. But so I thank you for every super chat and donation very much so. But he says, this is false advertising. I thought this was going to be a dumpster fire, not an actual conversation. I know, really. God, here, let me hang up on him real quick. No, that's so funny too, because he's right. I love when people come on and have civil conversations, and I hate when people are dishonest, and you are clearly not dishonest. I've talked to you for a very long time. I know you're very sincere in things that you've said. We've had long conversations in email. I do not discount anything that you said. I know you've looked at it. You've done your due diligence. You've done your homework. The problem is that, like when I see on Facebook, I have my argument. People are like, "Oh, that's just false." I was like, "Why?" And they never even understand the argument. You understand this argument, but they don't. And that's what I find to be disingenuous. And when those kind of people come on, I'm a little bit more...
I can see that.
It's not even hostility. It's a matter of just disgust, because they're wasting everybody's time when they say they're going to do something, and they don't even understand what the hell they're talking about. I had a guy tell me today, I'm not in fronting. In my argument for the atheist semantic collapse argument, I quote Oppie, because my paper takes what he says and builds upon it, and so I just use it as an entry piece. Right? That's not to say, look, because Oppie says this, my paper's right. Nothing like that. It's just everybody who writes a paper can start off with a quote, right? It just sets the tone for the paper. Nothing wrong with that. And this guy was like, "That's appeal to authority fallacy." I'm like, "Oh, shut the hell up! If you're that stupid that you don't even know a fallacious argumentium ad verecundium versus a non-fallacious version of argumentium ad verecundium, you don't need to be evaluating anything that I write." But this is what I deal with. And, of course, this was in an atheist experience group, the atheist experience fan group. So,
yeah, I don't know. Steve McRae in an ACA group is kind of asking for trouble. Right?
I get along with them on the Discord. I swear, I got no issues on their ACA Discord, which is not owned by them. But Ix, he's great. That guy is a hell of a mod, and he knows his shit, too.
What's his name? Which guy?
IX.
Oh, yeah. He's
brilliant. But he's not the only one. There's a few other ones there, but I don't have any problem on the ACA Discord. Never have. I did a what do they call it? A Q&A session for them back in like 2019 or something, and it's still listed in there too. There's archived.
Yeah, it depends who. Like like Eric and V are real sort of philosophical nerds, right? They'd have no problem talking.
Eric and I get along really.
But other people,
we're actually friends. I've talked to Eric personally many times away from the internet, and so I mean he's somebody that I would actually go visit in real life and be friends with. V I don't know at all, but Eric I really like. He's a good guy.
Okay. Well, I did. So I was going to bring up that one thing about that usefulness when we were talking about it. So the one. There is obviously the political motivation, as you've said, right? But I think there's another aspect that actually is relevant and justified, which is, it seems to me there's certain values of P or not P that are sufficiently malignant that it seems legitimate to just break it down into A and not A, at least to start the conversation, and then later, right?
Well, let's analyze that for a second. And by the way, I don't know if you ever saw, but Landon changed P to Darth Vader exist, and he said it holds true. So it doesn't matter what the P is. This will hold true for any proposition. Any proposition this works for. You don't.
Oh, the logic will definitely. I'm not saying it won't work.
Okay.
But I'm saying it's like you don't have to jump to calculus 4
right, sure, but again, look. Let's say something like I have legit an atheist out there that says A equal A does not represent reality. He's an atheist. He's an atheist leader, for Pete's sake, right? He says the law of identity doesn't hold for reality. It's completely not. Yeah, it's
that's
beyond irrational. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand logic. He doesn't understand anything about philosophy. He thinks because over a period of time things change, therefore nothing is ever itself, and it's in the constant changing. It's just a bizarre misunderstanding of the Leibniz law of identity, right, or the indiscernibility of identicals. He doesn't understand the concepts, and so. If I said to him, proposition is A equals A, or it is not the case that A equals A, he may not have a position on that. Even though to you and I, it's like, well, yeah, of course P is true, right? I mean, who the hell is going to say P is not true? But he might say P is not true because it doesn't represent reality, or he just might say, look, I think the question is kind of malformed because it doesn't represent, so I'm kind of agnostic on this. You cannot really say that there are not some people that have bizarre positions. Right? Even though you and I think it's so normative to say, yeah, of course A equals A, but clearly not. I mean, I know somebody who is arguing that it's not. So you got to be careful of that. But again, the logic holds true regardless. Somebody can still be agnostic on it. They may not be familiar with math.
Right, but the question, the point I was trying to make is, I think there are situations like, let's say P is like a Jeffrey Dahmer. I think people should. I think you should kill and eat people. I think it's fair in that situation to just split things into, are you one of those people or not? We can later have a conversation about whether you're agnostic about whether it's
right. Well, and that's perfectly fine. Sure.
But the police really should just be care about. Are you in that box? Right?
I am not even going to give you a counter on that. Again, I agree with you. There's certain things that are so morally egregious, they're not even up for a discussion. Like if somebody's, I don't want to get demonetized, but let's, because if I start to talk about the Holocaust, YouTube goes nuts. But if somebody is a denier, right? If somebody says it never happened, they're not going to be on my channel, right? I don't have any of those conversations. To me, that proposition that it did not happen is unconscionable, even consider, right? Or even to be, questionable about. However, you might have, but hang on, you might have a 5-year-old who's never been even familiar with it. They're not going to know. They're going to be somebody who doesn't have a position on it either way, or somebody who maybe has grown up with misinformation, right? They might have grown up with such misinformation on it that they hold the position that it never happened. Now, is that a proper belief? No, you and I know that's a false belief, right? And they're not justified maybe to even hold that belief, but that's irrelevant. See, you talk about the value with it, which is the actuological value of these beliefs and things of that nature. And that's a great discussion. Matter of fact, I will give you props wholeheartedly. You are the first person ever to come on in these arguments and talk about the axiological values of these things. And Cheshire and I keep complaining we never get that far. Askers, we never get that far because you have gotten further than any other person ever on these arguments, which is I'm thrilled with because I totally
I'll take that as a compliment.
It's a huge compliment because I think there's a great discussion to be had as far as axiological considerations of the arguments and propositional beliefs and things like that nature. But as Cheshire says, we never get that far. We never get off square one.
Is Cheshire okay? I haven't seen her on your channel in a while.
She's Cheshire. What kind of question is that? She's never okay.
Okay.
Yeah, she's fine. Yeah.
All right, just checking.
Oh, she's out there.
Okay, cool.
Cheshire, is it not true that we never get off first base most time to any value of these kind of arguments or the axiological considerations of what it means if this is the case, or should we even ponder whether a proposition's false or not? Should there be propositions out there we just don't even give any consideration to if they're true or not? And yeah, I think so, but we have an understanding of that because we have information as to why we shouldn't. But at one time we did give consideration to it, right? We're not born believing propositions are true. Right, we have to evaluate them, right? And we go, well, why do we hold this position true? Because we know it's not false.
And that's why I give the people at the ACA a little slack, right? Because they're coming from a position of, a lot of them were, they're escaping religion.
Yeah.
So for them, where P is God exists is sufficiently malignant for them to initially want to just, A or not A.
No, I totally get
They
that.
can get into philosophy and,
Yeah, well, think about it this way. And first of all, Cheshire is disappointed we've never got to second base. Her words. Your fault, not mine, girl. So there's a guy out there named Randolph Richardson. He's the head of the Atheist Canadian Alliance, which I have no idea if that's even a real thing at this point. But anyways, he maintains that anti-theism is the belief that God does not exist. Okay, and he doesn't understand that anti-theism has a long-standing history in philosophy of being an axiological term that the person who holds religion and God believes to be detrimental to society. They hold religion to be harmful, right?
Right.
This is this is the normative understanding of the term. Now, again, he can use words he wants, but by doing so, you've kind of devalued that word, and then what do you call that position, right? Because as you said, let me put on my atheist hat for a second, right? I haven't put on my full-on anti-theist hat. I'll put on my satanic anti-theist hat for a second. If I think the moral corruption of society is so great because of religion, if I think the atrocities are so great because of the Crusades and the things that happen in the Arab countries and the facts that they kill indiscriminately, they kill women who dare show their face, they kill people that are gay, honor killings, things that are so egregious, right? That you think religion should be abolished. You think that nobody should have a God belief because you think it devalues society. You are an anti-theist. Then there's an argument to be had for that, right? And at that point, it would not make sense to really worship that kind of God. You could still believe it exists. A theist could be an anti-theist. If they can say, look, this God does exist, but he's an asshole, right? I mean, you could do theoretically, but he devalues these terms because what do we have for that term now? Because you might be an anti-theist, right? You might hold the position, religion is bad.
It's actually very funny that you brought this up because I get asked, like, in the lack theist way of looking at things, right? They don't really have a name for the left-hand side, right? The believe there are no gods.
Yeah,
the strong
the lack atheist.
And I always want to call it anti-theist just because it's like, proton, anti-proton,
But don't think about it that way. I'll give you a perfect example. What is an anti?
But I do understand it has historical significance, so I can't do that.
But the term anti-hero doesn't mean against heroes. It doesn't even mean a villain. An anti-hero is a hero. It's just a reluctant hero, right? So the word, these prefixes have different usages in different words, and so. Like I said, you can't just say anti-hero, therefore that's a villain. No, it's not. It's still a type of hero. It's just a very reluctant type hero. And so, he just devalues these words next to nothing. But you, personally, you might hold that religion might be harmful. You might actually think that all gods are bullshit. I mean, do you put yourself in the strong atheist position?
Yes, I guess how would I term myself? I've been an atheist my whole life, so yeah, I believe there are no gods.
Yeah, okay, and that's perfectly fine. You know as well as I do that's justifiable, and I'm not even going to even ask you for your justification because I'm just going to assume that you can. I have no doubt that you probably can. A lot of reasons, but you have reasons why you hold that position. Isn't it odd when like for example, not too long ago, a self-proclaimed atheist, told me it is irrational for an atheist to claim there are no gods. And I brought that up to my audience, and they're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? That's nonsense. That's stupid. Why would that be irrational? You're saying atheism is irrational? When that's silly.
Yeah, did you figure out what he meant? Do you know what he meant?
Do you know how difficult it is trying to get information from a new atheist TM? It's literally like pulling teeth. It's just like, let me get that incisor. You can't do it. No, they're incomprehensible. They have no argument. They're completely non-rational. But it was just odd to me that was their argument. I was like, dude, my audience is full of atheists that they'll tell you gods are bullshit. They're okay with saying that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I try to cut them some slack because maybe they've never been even exposed to these kind of ideas before, Well,
that's what my channel's for. But
you never know.
A lot of the atheists will, I like watch my. I don't know if you watched my last video. I did a breakdown of Conor McGregor, whatever the hell his name is. And Matt Dillahunty, and I had people leaving comments that I know didn't watch the video, and the ones that did.
Oh no, I saw you. I saw that out there. I haven't listened yet.
And even the ones that did were like, "Oh, Steve, sophistry, blah blah blah." I'm like, "Where the hell is sophistry in here?" Look, I enjoy good sophistry. I'm not going to front. I enjoy it when somebody else does it. Like Jonathan Swift, Modest Proposal. I read that and I thought it was brilliant. That very long time ago. But I'm not good at sophistry. Sophistry has utility. Sophistry has value when it's done right. Not to mislead people, but to lead people to the right way through false argumentation. That's fine, right? Polemics and things of that nature. I'm not good at it. I don't do sophistry. And so when people accuse me of sophistry, I'm like, I don't think you're using the word right. I mean, even though there's no right or wrong to use words, but it's just,
you think it means.
It's like, I don't know how you're using this term because I will tell you, I'm not good at sophistry. Why would you accuse me of doing something that I willfully go out of my way not to do? Because I suck at it. Doesn't mean I can't. I did. Okay, I will admit, one of my blog entries is a little bit sophistic. One. And that was my response to Aaron Ra.
Okay.
And only to a small degree because his was really bad to mine. It was so bad. And I don't remember what I even said in there that was sophistic, but I remember thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to employ a little bit of sophistry here. But I did refer to myself as Mr. Agnostic. I think that's what
I don't know. I guess it's a contradiction, but I actually am both a fan of you and Matt Dillahunty. It's fine. Actually
Look, I got nothing against
Matt. I think he's very entertaining, and I just put on a different hat that uses different words when I listen to him.
I respect that, and look, you're able to do so. But see, here's the difference: you understand the topic. You're able to do that. His little followers that don't do that, they come over to my page, they come over and all they do is throw insults. And you could just tell they're Dillahunty clones, and you're like, okay, let's have an honest to God discussion like we're having. They're not up to that level. And people are going to clip the hell out of this, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that I'm way the fuck up here. I'm down here. I'm a layperson. But when I'm down here and we got new atheists that are underground, that are so below that they're buried miles deep under rubble, how am I supposed to have a conversation with that? Right. I can't. It's impossible. And I think my audience knows this because they've experienced this. They've tried to have arguments with people that are not competent to have a rational argument. And then you ask them for evidence, you get nothing. You get bump-kiss. So, yeah, no, it's fine. Watch the Atheist Experience. Be fans, Matt Dillon. People are like, you have they're like, you have a hate boner for Matt. I'm like, I don't give a shit about Matt. I don't think about Matt. People send me a video, I do a review on it. That's it. And then I go about my day.
He's entertaining.
Yeah, no, he can be entertainment. Look, some of the things I've seen, I go, this is funny. And I used to like Matt 10 years ago, 12 years ago. He was much better in his discussions.
Yeah, he definitely changed. I will say it took me years, but believe it or not, I actually have watched every Atheist Experience show or listened. But it took like 3 years or something. I just throw it on when you around the house.
I like old Tracy Harris.
Matt start from his first day, and his arguments have changed so much over the years.
Before Tracy Harris kind of went, into the SJW territory, she actually had some really good conversations on the Atheist Experience.
She was awesome.
Yeah. I liked her style, I liked her approach. She was soft, but then harsh. But she'd be conversational. Matt's not conversational. Matt just isn't, and so I'm not entertained anymore. Somebody in my live chat said, Chris O says, exactly, here to learn AXP for entertainment. Perfectly fine with that. I have never told people not to watch the Atheist Experience. Not that anybody would listen to me anyways. What I say is, I personally believe that it's ran just like a religion. I see similarities, like huge similarities.
Now especially, because he used to, there was a point where he was learning it himself.
Yeah.
So he was more into explaining it, and
because he was leaving.
Now he's just sort of, you're one of those, and he just sort of slams.
Exactly.
It, right?
Yeah, exactly. And 10 years ago they weren't like that. About 10 years ago. Recently, new board of directors kept changing over. They started running it as if and I've said this many times. Once people leave religiosity. Once people live, theism, and they stop believing, it doesn't mean they become instant critical thinkers. They still have religious mindsets. They still want to latch onto something. And they still say, okay, I've been told this. I'm going to fixate on this and be evangelical about this. And then they go, oh, well, you know what? I no longer believe this, but I believe the AXP is putting out correct information. So I'm going to be evangelical about that. They don't instantly stop being evangelicals. I've noticed this, especially with young creationists, ex-evangelicals. It's just that their brains have not learned. Maybe I need to be a little bit more reserved and critical thinking of what everybody's telling me and look into it, because they take what they say by fiat, and it's just bullshit, because people know now they've been lied to by groups like American Atheist and the Atheist Experience. Outright lied to. I'm not even going to pull any punches. Those groups lie. Straight up lie. It's not even a matter of being equivocating or anything like that. They're telling people misinformation. People that know me and know some other people that are around me have shown it to be incorrect, and they just go, whatever. Steve's a poopy head. You think they're going to come on here and talk about WASP or anything like that? No, they don't understand it, first of all, but they say it's wrong by fiat. And Landon is no idiot. If somebody could show that this was logically incorrect, Landon would have some explaining to do.
Yeah.
Me, I'd go, okay, whatever, I'm not going to use it again.
I've got a pretty strong math background, but there's a layer of rust on it about, a half a foot.
But I'm not like Landon. I just feel like, I'm a layperson. I fucked up. Okay, whatever. I mean, I threw this together and hope that it made sense, but it made sense to me. And Landon was like, yeah, let's work on this. That's why I gave him credit for it. But yeah, you show this to be this to be logically wrong. Hey, Landon, what happened, bro? All
right. Well, I'll have to go back and look at WASP. I mean, kind of the things that were standing out to me was that, like, the weak atheist equals not BP didn't seem right. We were talking about that, and
that's just like for the argument, because people when somebody says, look, I don't believe, right? That means not BP. I don't believe. So if they say I don't believe, then you have to go one step further and say, well, what is your position then? Well, I just don't believe. Well, okay, but do you not believe because you believe it's false? I'm not saying that. Okay, if you're not saying that, now follow here. If you're not saying that you don't believe because it's false, there's only one other position you can be. In the middle, agnostic, having no position either way. There's no other options. And I dare anybody to show logically otherwise. It's impossible.
Yeah. I'm still fixated on the how the weak should not be able to contain the BP position. I mean, the B not B position.
Yeah, it's hard to think that way. Because
I can't get out of that.
The reason,
but I'll go and digest and think.
The only reason why, and this is a thing with logic, is because in order to get to B not P, you have to lack a belief first, right? So it's a subset. It's the people that say, oh, look, I don't believe God exists, and I believe that God does not exist. And so if you believe that God does not exist, that entails you don't believe. They're called subalternations, and that's why in my atheist semantic collapse argument, when I put it towards the square of opposition, it starts to make sense to people, right? And in fact, let me
so basically, what you're saying is,
let me screen share something real quick with you.
Strong does correspond to belief, and weak does correspond to non-belief.
But
that doesn't preclude weak actually containing strong.
Weak doesn't contain strong.
Right.
Well, weak contains strong. Weak contains strong because all strong atheists are logically inclusive of weak atheists. Right. So the weak atheist is you got to remember, weak atheism is a weird epistemic position. It's a psychological position. Somebody's saying, look, I don't believe. But again, there's only two ways they don't believe. Either they believe it's false or they have no position the other way. There's only three epistemic positions. You believe, you disbelieve, you suspend judgment. There's a fourth one where you believe both, but I think both you and I would agree.
Ruled out.
That's ruled out because there's contradiction. Yeah. Obviously.
Right. In fact, each of the B circles include a and not of the other position because that must be so, right?
Yeah. So
if you believe God, you can't. If you BP, that also implies not B, not B.
Right. So I'm going to show my screen with you real quick. Here are the donkey porn. One sec. Can you see the screen? Is that?
I can. It's a little small, but I can.
But it is showing.
I gotta put my glasses on.
Yeah, it might be a little small. I'll blow it up. Don't worry. So this starts off from Burgess Jackson's paper. Okay, that should be pretty big. Can you see this? Can the outside see this?
Okay, yeah, I can. Right?
All right, so these are the three positions: the atheism, the theism, the agnosticism, and then you have this is a null set because you cannot have a person who believes in the non-existence of God and believes at the same time. So we understand that, right? So we're going to say that position. And by the way, the outside is not seeing this. I don't think, are they? Let me. You know what? Hang on one sec, because the outside's not seeing this. Video. I can fix this. All right. Now they can see the outside here. They won't be able to see you very well. All right. I'm not going to be able to read the chat here for a second. So this position here is negated. So basically, you're left with the three other positions. And the agnostic would be somebody who has a non-belief either way. I think you agree with this. It's pretty standard. Now,
yeah.
Now let's put this with the logical relationships, which is Demi's work. Which I'm not going to go through all this, but this is what I use in my paper. I cite him on this, and I go through these to set up the contradictories, the contraries, the subcontraries, and the subalternations. And what happens is this. Let's kind of go through this. So this is the square of opposition, okay? And I'm going to walk you through this. And I really wish I could see the live chat as I do this. I'm going to have to go back and watch. You know what? Maybe I can finagle this a little bit.
Contradiction.
Okay, I can. All right, so can you guys see now? You guys can see this square of opposition on the outside chat? I make sure that they're seeing it. I guess I can go live here and see. Yeah, they can see it. All right, so now this is how the square of opposition works. If you believe, and here B is belief, S is subject, G is the proposition God exists. Okay? Right?
Okay.
All right, so
S is subject? Is that what
S
you
is
said?
subject, right. It's an index.
Okay.
So here's a person, BSG means the subject believes God exists.
Okay.
Now, the contrary to that would be the subject believes that the proposition is false. The contradiction would be does not believe God exists, and the subalteration would mean does not believe that God does not exist. So the easiest way to show is this side. BS, not G, believes God does not exist. That means you do not believe God exists, right? Remember we already said for that entailment?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is how the square of opposition work. With the top part, both of these cannot be true at the same time as far as the positions, right? You cannot believe and not believe at the same time, but the positions themselves can both be false as far as them being somebody who doesn't hold those positions. You can hold neither positions, so these are called contraries. If you hold both positions at the bottom, which are the subalterations, you're an agnostic. And so the way this would work would be very simple. You know what? Not that one. Okay.
Yeah, they're all kind of saying the same thing in different ways.
Well, let's label these. So I was I'm going to bring this up slowly, but I don't think I've got a screenshot for it. Let me see here. Maybe this one. All right, yeah, this one's fine. All right, so you agree that BSG would be theism, right? And I'm sure I already know your answers, but you agree that BSG would be theism, right?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I switch back through. I actually use both framework, so I'll put on my philosophical hat, and the answer is definitely yes.
Well, this is pretty standard. I mean, if you believe God exists, you're a theist. I don't know anybody, even ACA wouldn't argue that, I don't think, would they?
Theism, no.
Okay. So
atheism,
right.
maybe.
So let's start on the left-hand side of the square of opposition.
Okay.
This position here, BSG, you agree would be theism, correct?
Correct. Actually,
now we've got a starting point. Now let's go around and fill in the rest, okay? Let's go diagonal. Would you agree that the contradiction of believe God exists is does not believe God exists?
Correct.
That's a contradiction. You cannot believe and not believe. So this thick line here is called a contradiction, okay?
Yep, that makes sense.
Now, would you also agree that if you believe God does not exist, I'm not talking about definitions, but a person who says there are no gods, would you call that person atheist?
I would.
Yeah. Well, I think the ACA would too. I mean, clearly, if somebody's saying, "Look, there's no gods," what else are you going to call them? I'm not saying that they're saying that's necessary. I'm saying it is certainly sufficient, though, right? If somebody says, "I believe there's no gods," that's clearly sufficient.
It is sufficient, but I think the lower right is also, they would say that's
right. We're getting there.
Right?
We're getting there. All right. So the top part you think would be labeled correctly, theism and atheism, because if somebody believes God exists, they're definitely called a theist. If they don't believe God does not exist, that would still be considered atheism. I don't know anybody who would argue against this so far. And then the agnostic doesn't hold a position either way. Now, people will argue about that. They're saying, look, agnostic is blah, 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 blah. Put that aside. Looking at the square of not opposition, I've always said that, not BSG and not B, not G, which is on my Venn diagram, is simplified. It's just not BP and not B, not P. But this is the same thing. So this is the agnostic down here that says that this is true and this is true, meaning that they hold them as conjunction. All right. Now, let's say that we take the subalternation of atheism and we call that atheism. Okay?
Oh, I see. You already made the charts.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Dude, I got a paper on this. I even broke it down into Boolean logic using NAND gates and OR gates. And I went full throttle, man.
All right, cool.
All right, so the new atheist would say that this is atheism and this is atheism, right? They would say that both of these are considered atheism, correct?
Correct, yeah.
All right, great. Now, here's a problem. What do we label this position? The WASP argument says that the theist is allowed to argue this is theism, just like atheism are allowed to argue this is atheism, because this is a subalternation, okay? And a subalternation is true by implication, not by truth value. So if this is true, BSG is true, and I don't mean that true as in God exists. When I say true or false here, this means the person holds that position. It is true that a person holds the position God exists. That's true. So if it's true they hold the position God exists, it must be false that they don't hold the position that God does not exist, right? So if this is true, they hold that God exists, right? It's a contradiction for them to say, I believe God exists and I do not believe God does not exist. These cannot be true at the same time. Following?
Yeah, I'm following you.
Yeah, this contradictions cannot be true at the same time, because if this is true, this cannot be true. You can't say I believe and I don't believe at the same time. That's a contradiction.
Correct.
All right. So the atheist, by allowing the atheist to hold this as atheism, the WASP argument just argues that this is allowed to be theism, which is the subalternation of theism. And so it would look like this. So now you have the
I would agree that yes, this is what you're arguing.
Yes, this is my WASP argument and my atheist semantic collapse argument combined.
In the picture, yes.
Yeah, because now you have a case where atheist, and this is what the atheists say, look, agnostic is atheist because it holds this down here, right? It doesn't, both these on top are positive epistemic claims, right? Meaning they have positive epistemic positions. The bottom ones are not, right? They are a second order belief, but we'll put that to the side. But both these on top are a position of saying it is the case God exists, or it is the case that God does not exist. They're positive claims. And by the way, all claims are positive. But here in the bottom, now we have a problem. Because now the atheist says, look, if you don't believe God exists, which is this down here, that would include agnostics. Okay, under that schema, that is true. But now the theist can do the same thing and say, oh, look, if you don't hold this position up here, right? If you don't hold the atheism, if you don't hold the positive epistemic status, we're going to call that theist, and that also includes agnostic. And so the semantic collapse. And by the way, I did this because people had asked me for a very simple way to understand my argument, and I was like, I'll come up with a very simplistic visual way. This was it. So I'm glad this got done at the same time. Now you have somebody who is an agnostic who doesn't have a position either way. That is also an atheist, because atheists have said anybody who lacks belief is an atheist, and you're also a theist because a theist says the same thing, that if you don't believe that God does not exist, you're a theist. So now all these three terms on the bottoms collapse into meaningless, because now you have a person who says, yeah, well, I'm a theist, I'm an atheist, I'm agnostic, because of the way things are defined. That's the atheist semantic collapse argument in a nutshell. I have it much more formalized, more than you guys can possibly imagine. The people who have read it will tell you it's very formalized. I mean, I used some pretty intricate, well, it's not even that intricate logic. It's very intricate way of do argumentation, including Boolean logic. I don't know if there's anybody out there that's read it.
See, I think that
does that help? Does that help?
Oh, that was great.
Thank you very much.
I agree. That was a good visual. But I think the lower left one, they would call all of those corners atheism except the upper left.
Well, they wouldn't necessarily call the bottom corner atheism.
Not B, not G.
Yeah.
I think they would, just because it's an A.
No, because if a person is not BS, not G, it might be because they BSG. And we're talking in code, it sounds like, right? But because that's a subalternation, if somebody believes there are no God, or somebody believes God exists, that it will entail because it's by implication, by the imply gate, not B, S, not G. So just because somebody says, look, I don't hold the position there are no gods, you can't tell whether they hold the position God does exist or they have no position either way. It's the same thing on the opposite side. So it's underdeterminate. And by the way, this is the most productive, interesting conversation I've ever had on these arguments ever on this channel. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. You're not even a patron, are you? Are you a patron? I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I pay you some money on YouTube.
I'm not even. It's completely irrelevant. I mean, I'm telling you, this is the most productive, honest discussion that we've never got this far because nobody even knows enough to get this freaking far. I'm having a mental orgasm here. Leave me alone. But no, I'm serious. I appreciate it, man, because this
has been great. Yeah,
it does take some understanding. You've done your due diligence to get the terminology, and so I'm telling you about these things. You understand it, but a lot of the other people that have the experience, they don't get it. And my audience does because they've heard this a million times. But this is the first time they've seen it explained visually like this, I think.
Yeah, that was cool.
So
you can understand.
Go back to the drawing board. I don't think you've defeated the argument, but I think you've definitely, made some good points. I think you have a very good handle on it, and I love the fact you're trying to relate it to some kind of axiological on the value. And you can even say, look, Steve, your WASP argument's true, but I don't hold it to be very valuable, blah blah blah, because this is this. Okay, that's a subjective thing, and you're perfectly allowed to have that. But my argument isn't subjective. My argument is an objectively verifiable fact that you can. And anybody can go discover. Anybody can go through the argument and see it's objective. It's not just mere subjective opinion. I use logic, and again, I'm using actual gates. I use or, nor, and imply gate. I think in my paper, and it seems to work out. Has anybody out there read my paper? I don't know if anybody else has. I sent.
Do you have there's a formal paper somewhere?
Yeah, I'll send it to you if you want. It's a formalized paper.
Yeah, sure. I'll
send it to you an email. I think Kawasa's read it. See here. I'm trying to look at my audience here. Cheshire tried what she said she was going to, but I don't think she did. Anyways, all right. So
the only thing about that square, I guess I have the same issue with this. That's the square of opposition picture you just showed. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the correct model for a lack theist, right? They don't.
Well. Okay.
I don't know if it necessarily maps.
It's a simplistic version. If you want to get a little more specialized, you can go to what's called a hexagon of opposition, right? It's a very specific type of hexagon that has atheism, not atheism, theism, not theism, agnostic, not agnostic, right? So now instead of having 4 points, you've got 6 points to contend with. The logic holds, and I do have that logic down.
But isn't the lack theist position just theist and atheist with a line of contradiction between them?
Well,
I mean, that's kind of what they're doing.
Right, yeah, but I mean, sure, but then again, what happens to the person who has no position either way? They're being subsumed under agnostic or atheist, but the theist can do the same thing. But the theist can say, look, you have no position either way, you're a theist. And the atheist says, no, you have no position either way, you're an atheist. Because you have to remember this, every belief has a non-belief component. If you believe this true, you don't believe it's false. Every belief has a non-belief component. And so when somebody says, look, I don't have a belief in P, and the atheist says, well, that makes you an atheist. Well, the theist goes, well, yeah, you don't have a belief in not P. You're a theist. They both can try to pull the agnostic to either side. And as Dr. Oppie says, the agnostic is no more closer to atheism than it is to theism. It's no more closer. It's in between theism and atheism, contrary to the ACA. Even though what's really the funniest part, gumballs.
Well, it's there. It just doesn't have a name. It's still there, but there's no name.
That might be true. You might have a point there, but it's so funny because Matt Dillon talks about gumballs, and all these atheists are like, gumballs, there's no middle ground, and I'm like, no, the gumball argument shows there is a middle ground. That's the whole point. It literally shows that you don't have to pick a position. Right? You can say, I don't accept their even, nor do I accept their odd. In my Gumballs and God essay, which, by the way, was reviewed by Landon, the new atheists hate it because they say there's no middle position. You're like, well, what's this? Oh, you're just mixing words and you're just being logical. And it's like, well.
Yeah, there's like I was thinking of an example the other day too about what if you set up your system such that if you believe in P, or you believe in not P, those are the theists. And the atheists are everybody else who doesn't believe.
Right. Well, that's exactly what I believe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can set up labels in all kinds of different ways.
And that's why it's dishonest. Because if a theist said to me, hey, Steve, you don't hold the belief there are no gods, you're a theist, I'd be like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because I'm not going to let them tell me how to label myself. And so when people say, well, Steve's is afraid to be called an atheist, I'd be like, no. If I thought there was no gods, I'd be out there going, I'm an atheist. I'm a proud atheist. There are no gods. They're bullshit. Let me tell you why. I have no problem. Do you you know what the funniest part, dude? I, of all people, I've been on YouTube 8 years. You know, I've had ups and downs. I've had, you know, big channels, little small channel. Well, even it wasn't really big, I guess, 33,000 subs. But I mean, we were making decent money. We had a successful YouTube channel and show.
I mean, that's how I discovered you. Actually, was watching Aaron Ra.
Yeah, great, awesome.
Non-sec, right? And then I like a week later, that thing with Kyle went down. I was like, wait a minute, this guy's getting hefted. I want to follow this.
So let me ask you, because you've watched me for a long time. Am I the kind of person who gives a flying fuck what anybody else thinks on YouTube about me or anything else? If I think that I have a strong position, do you think when they say, well, Steve just does not want to be called an atheist because, you know, he's fearful of this and emotional of this, and I'm like, why the fuck would I care? I don't even understand. It's like, do you even know me? I'd be like, I mean, there's some things about the Satanic Church I find interesting that I think they make good points on. Right? And I'd be like, I'm a proud Satanist if I was. I don't care. People look at you like, you're a Satanist? That's irrelevant to me. Yet I see that dishonest approach from certain ACA new atheists out there going, well, Steve just doesn't want to be called an atheist. That's an appeal to emotion. And everybody who knows me has to realize that it's such utter bullshit. Like, I give a damn what people think. I don't. I give a damn about what people think that I care about, and they have rational conversations. Like, for example, I gave a damn what you thought because you were rational what you were saying. You had good points to be made, and you weren't just trying to shove it down somebody's throat and saying, look, Steve's a mean poopy head, therefore he's wrong. You're like, well, let's analyze this.
Try to figure this out. Yeah,
I love that. No, shit, do more of it. But I am going to wrap it up. It has been a very long day.
Okay, yeah, me too.
I'm going to probably play a little more of my Flight Slim because it's been calming. And I'm going to go on the Great Debate YouTube channel. Not tonight.
I actually installed, what is it? It's X-Plane.
I tried X-Plane 11. I couldn't get into it. I did demo.
Exactly. It's like, oh my God, you really actually have to know how to fly to use this.
It just, I don't know. I didn't like it. But I got Flight Gear, which is free. And it took me a while to get it to work right. It was a little buggy at first, but the only thing I cannot do is take off. I don't know why. But I am trying to learn the concepts. I used to know the concepts a lot better than I do now. How to fly on a certain VR radio, intercept the radio on your OBS header, and then fly out of the radio. I get the concepts, and I could do ILS landings. I find it fun. I find it relaxing. When I first had the Mike Flight Simulator, I think it was 2004 or something. I mean, I literally had planned. I went to Bermuda Dunes Airport, and I radioed over, and I went to LAX and landed. I in theory know how to do it, but the ruins of realism when I'm trying to take off, and it's like this, and I'm going this way. I'm like, and all of a sudden I'm trying to do a westbound heading, right? And I'm going, all of a sudden I'm going like due south or something. I'm like, what the hell just happened here?
Literally, the last time I used the Microsoft Flight Simulator was 1989, I think.
Chuck Yeager. Chuck Yeager's simulator. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 is supposed to be the best. I've been watching some videos on that. It's cool as hell. And if it comes on sale, I will get it.
All right, I'll give that a try. Yeah, because I'm just not.
Well, it's like $60 right now. I'm gonna wait till it goes down.
Either.
But because again, I don't play a lot, so I don't want anybody to invest anything in it. But Flight Gear works just as well for the most part. The Microsoft is too heavy for me because they have full ATC that you can have. They have literally a program where you can have people that are actual air traffic controllers sit around in the sim with this radar thing, and it's just like ATC. And I can't do ATC yet. I understand what they're saying most of the time, but anyways, let's wrap this up, my friend.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate it. It was great getting to talk to you. I
likewise,
appreciate
man. I appreciate it very much, and thank you for the civil conversation. I look forward to more of them with more people. If people want to, like I said, I put this on Twitter just recently. I don't block or discount people for their arguments. I block shitty people because they're shitty fucking people, and there's a distinction to be made there. And so, an argument is an argument. I don't care if you have the world's worst argument or you heard somebody else. As long as you're able to articulate it, I'm willing to listen. Come on down. And so. hopefully we'll do more of these things. Sounds good?
All right.
Awesome.
All right.
Buddy.
I appreciate it.
Peace, buddy.
Take care. Yep. Talk to you
Good,
soon.
good night, all.
Take care.